Hello and welcome to Shadow and Scream, your ultimate destination for spine-chilling horror stories. Hold your breath and prepare for a terrifying journey into the unknown. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's creepy tale.
Story number 1. Title: Ashes of Love. The old, ivy-covered manor stood majestically on the hill, its grand ballroom adorned with flowers and twinkling lights for the wedding of James and Emily. It was a perfect summer evening, and the air buzzed with excitement and joy as friends and family gathered to celebrate the union of the happy couple. The ceremony had been beautiful, with Emily glowing in her white gown and James looking dapper in his suit. They exchanged vows under a floral arch, promising to love and cherish each other for eternity. Their love was palpable, radiating warmth and happiness to everyone present. As the sun set and twilight descended, the reception began. Guests mingled in the softly lit garden, while music floated through the air. Laughter and clinking glasses accompanied toasts to the bride and groom. But not all was as it seemed. 3 years before, James had been in a tumultuous relationship with a woman named Lisa. She was passionate and intense, her love for James bordering on obsession despite his attempts to end things amicably. Lisa struggled to let go. Her heartbreak spiraled into despair, leading to a tragic end when she hung herself in her apartment, leaving a note that read, "Love is forever, even in death." The news devastated James, and the guilt weighed heavily on him for a long time. He moved on, eventually finding happiness with Emily. Yet, unbeknownst to him, Lisa's spirit had not found peace. Her love had twisted into something dark and malevolent, and she vowed that if she couldn't have James, no one would. As the wedding celebration continued, strange occurrences began to unfold. A chill swept through the room, flickering the candle flames despite the still air. Guests shivered, brushing it off as an odd draft. Emily, while dancing with her father, felt a cold hand brush her shoulder. She turned, expecting to see James, but no one was there. She dismissed it as a trick of her imagination, attributing it to wedding jitters. But Lisa's spirit watched from the shadows, her presence growing stronger. She had waited for this moment, her anger burning like an unquenchable fire. She whispered through the wind, her voice echoing around the ballroom. James froze, a chill creeping up his spine. As the evening progressed, the incidents became more alarming. The lights flickered, and shadows seemed to dance across the walls. In the midst of the celebration, the chandelier above the dance floor began to sway. Guests gasped, stepping back as a low, haunting laugh resonated through the room. "James, why did you leave me?" the voice whispered, now loud enough for Emily to hear. She grabbed James's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. James nodded, his heart pounding. Suddenly, the ballroom doors slammed shut, trapping the guests inside. Panic spread as they realized something was terribly wrong. The temperature plummeted and a wind howled through the room, snuffing out the candles and plunging the room into darkness. The guests huddled together, whispering in fear as shadows seemed to close in around them. James clung to Emily, his mind racing. He had to protect her, to save her from the wrath of a spirit he had never believed in until now. In the darkness, a single flame flickered to life at the center of the room, illuminating the space with an eerie glow. The flame spread rapidly, licking up the walls and igniting the decorations. Panic erupted as the fire grew. James and Emily ran toward the doors, but they wouldn't budge. Lisa's spirit loomed in the flames, her face twisted with anger and betrayal. "You promised me forever, James," she wailed, her voice mingling with the roar of the fire. "If I can't have you, no one will." The flames spread faster, devouring everything in their path. Guests screamed, trying to find an escape as smoke filled the air. Emily stumbled, her dress catching on fire. James desperately tried to put out the flames, but it was too late. The fire engulfed them both, their screams mingling with the cries of the guests and the maniacal laughter of Lisa's spirit. As the fire consumed the manor, Lisa's spirit watched, her revenge complete. The love that had once been pure and beautiful was reduced to ashes, leaving nothing but sorrow and destruction in its wake. In the days that followed, the town mourned the loss of James and Emily, the couple whose love had ended in tragedy. The manor stood as a charred ruin, a haunting reminder of the wedding day that turned into a nightmare. Locals spoke in hushed tones about the spirit that lingered there, warning others to stay away from the cursed place where love had burned to ashes. Some say that on quiet nights you can still hear the whispers of a woman scorned, and the faint echoes of laughter turned to screams, a ghostly reminder that love, when twisted by darkness. And so, the legend of the ashes of love lived on, a chilling tale of passion, revenge, and the enduring power of love even in death. Story number 2. Title: The Last Birthday at Kef. The KFC was bustling with activity that Saturday afternoon. Balloons and streamers decorated the restaurant as Tommy celebrated his 8th birthday with friends and family. Laughter echoed through the space as the kids ran around, faces smeared with frosting, and hands greasy from chicken drumsticks. Tommy's parents, Laura and Mike, had gone all out to make sure it was a day to remember. They had hired a clown to entertain the children. A man in a colourful costume with a painted smile that stretched from ear to ear. The aroma of fried chicken filled the air, mingling with the happy chatter of children and adults alike. As the afternoon wore on, the children gathered around the table for cake. Tommy was beaming as everyone sang happy birthday, and his mother lit the candles on the cake. The clown handed Tommy a party hat, his eyes twinkling with an unsettling gleam. Just as Tommy took a deep breath to blow out the candles, the lights flickered. A collective gasp went up from the guests, followed by nervous laughter. Then, without warning, the room was plunged into darkness. What happened? Someone muttered, their voice tense with concern. Laura felt for her husband's hand, gripping it tightly. It must be a power outage, Mike said, trying to sound reassuring, but there was something unsettling about the sudden darkness, as if the room had been swallowed by a deeper void than mere absence of it. A cold wind swept through the restaurant, rattling the windows and sending the balloons into a frenzy. The children huddled closer, their laughter replaced by whimpers. "It's okay, kids," the clown said, his voice echoing eerily in the dark. "We'll have the lights back on in no time." But as he spoke, his cheerful tone took on an unsettling edge, his words lingering like a ghostly whisper. Suddenly, a loud bang resounded from the kitchen, followed by a chorus of screams. Panic erupted as people stumbled through the darkness, their movements frantic and chaotic. Laura called out for Tommy, but her voice was lost in the cacophony. She could hear the children crying, their small voices mingling with the sound of chairs scraping and tables overturning. In the chaos, a strange, low hum began to vibrate through the floor, growing louder and more intense until it seemed to pulse through every bone. As the hum reached a crescendo, the clown's laughter broke through the din, sharp and twisted, nothing like the jolly chuckles from earlier. It was a sound that sent shivers down Laura's spine. Then, with a sudden rush, the hum stopped, and dim red glow filled the room, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist with a life of their own. Laura's heart pounded as she searched the room for Tommy. The once familiar space had transformed into a nightmarish scene, the red light painting everything in sinister hues. The clown stood at the center, his painted smile now a grotesque grin. His eyes glinted with malice, and the balloons above him bobbed like decapitated heads. "Welcome to the party," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. The guests were paralyzed with fear, their eyes fixed on the clown. They were sitting in a circle, their eyes wide with horror, tears streaming down their cheeks as they cried out in unison, their voices an eerie chorus of despair. Laura stumbled forward, her instincts driving her toward Tommy, but as she moved, the air seemed to thicken, slowing her steps, as if she were wading through molasses. "You can't save them," the clown taunted, his form shifting and blurring. Desperation clawed at Laura as she reached for her son, but the clown was faster, his hands reaching out to stop her. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. But the clown only laughed, a hollow, haunting sound that echoed through the room. As he stood there, a dark memory surfaced, flickering like a movie reel across the red glow. Years ago, in this very town, a boy named Jason had celebrated his birthday at the local carnival. The clown, then a young entertainer named Henry, had been hired to bring joy to the children. The party was a lively affair, filled with games, laughter, and the smell of popcorn in the air. But as the festivities wound down, disaster struck. An old generator, overworked by the lights and rides, exploded into flames, engulfing the carnival in chaos. Amid the panic and confusion, young Jason was trapped in the fun. Henry had tried to save him, battling the flames and smoke, but it was too late. The fire claimed the boy's life, leaving the clown with scars, both physical and emotional, consumed by guilt and grief. Henry's mind began to unravel. His painted smile became a haunting reminder of the day joy turned to ashes. Now, in the darkness of the café, the spirit of the clown was driven by vengeance, a twisted desire to make others feel the pain he could never escape. "You were happy," he said, his voice a rasping whisper, "just like Jason. But happiness is fleeting." As the memory faded, Laura understood the depth of the clown's torment, a soul trapped in an endless cycle of sorrow. "Let them go," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. The clown hesitated, his form flickering as if caught between worlds. For a moment, the malice in his eyes softened, replaced by a flicker of the humanity he had lost. The room fell silent, the red glow dimming as the air grew still. The children, sensing a change, looked around in confusion, their cries fading into quiet sobs. In that moment of stillness, Laura felt a glimmer of hope. "Jason wouldn't want this," she said softly, stepping closer to the clown. The clown's expression twisted with anguish, his painted smile cracking as if to reveal the broken man beneath. And then, as if surrendering to a force beyond his control, he stepped back, the red glow in his eyes fading into darkness. With a shuddering sigh, the clown disappeared, leaving only the faintest echo of laughter in the air. When the lights flickered back on, the restaurant was transformed. Tables and chairs were upright, balloons bobbed gently on their strings, and the children blinked in the sudden brightness, as if waking from a bad dream. Laura rushed to Tommy, pulling him into a tight embrace as relief flooded through her. Around them, parents reunited with their children, tears mingling with laughter as they held one another close. The KFC, once a scene of terror, was filled with warmth and light once more. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. But inside, the shadows lingered, a testament to the horrors that had unfolded. Laura and Mike never found their son or the others. The restaurant was abandoned, a haunting reminder of the night when laughter turned to cries, and a birthday celebration became a descent into darkness. And somewhere, in the forgotten corners of the world, the clown waits, his painted smile a chilling promise of the next party to come. Story number 3. Title: Storm of Shadows. The rain started as a gentle patter on the windshield, quickly escalating into a relentless downpour as Emily drove down the lonely highway. It was past midnight, and she was eager to return home to her husband with the wonderful news that had brought her so much joy. After years of trying, they were finally going to be parents. The road was slick, and visibility was poor as the rain cascaded in sheets, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning. Emily tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her heart racing from a mix of excitement and anxiety. She could hardly wait to share the news, but the journey felt eternal in the throes of the storm. Without warning, the car jolted, and a loud clunk echoed beneath her. Emily's heart sank as she guided her car to the side of the road, where it sputtered to a complete stop. She turned the key in the ignition. "Just great," she muttered to herself, glancing at her phone. No signal. The darkness outside felt suffocating, the rain pounding against the roof like 1,000 drumbeats. As she sat there, the storm seemed to grow more intense, and a shiver ran down her spine. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the landscape, revealing a faint light approaching from the distance. It was another car. Hope and apprehension mingled in her mind as the vehicle drew closer, its headlights piercing through the gloom. The car pulled up alongside hers, and the passenger window rolled down. Inside sat a man, his features obscured by shadow. "Need some help?" he called out, his voice barely audible over the storm. Relief washed over Emily. "Yes, my car broke down. I don't have any signal to call for help." The man nodded. "Hop in." Something about his demeanor was unsettling, but Emily dismissed the thought. It was late. The storm was fierce, and she needed to get home. She grabbed her purse and stepped out into the rain, making her way to the stranger's car. As she settled into the passenger seat, she glanced over at the driver. His face was gaunt, and his eyes seemed to gleam with an unnatural light, though his expression was calm. "Thank you so much," Emily said, trying to steady her nerves. The man nodded, pulling back onto the road. The silence in the car was heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic beat of the windshield wipers. Emily tried to make small talk, but the man's responses were curt, his focus unwavering on the road ahead. "You seem happy," he said, abruptly. "I am," she replied, hesitantly. The man's grip on the steering wheel tightened, and his expression darkened. "A child, huh? Life can change so quickly," he murmured, almost to himself. A chill crept over Emily, and she turned to look at him more closely. His eyes were fixed on the road, yet there was a sense of foreboding that emanated from him. Suddenly, the car veered sharply off the road, and the man pulled to a stop. Emily's heart raced. They were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by darkness. "Why are we stopping?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man turned to her, his face now fully visible in the dim glow of the dashboard. His eyes burned with an intensity that made her blood run cold. "You remind me of her," he said, his voice now a low growl. Emily felt a rising panic. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I had a family once. I was happy too, until it was all taken away." A bolt of fear shot through Emily as realization dawned. The man beside her was no ordinary stranger. He was something else entirely, trapped between worlds, haunted by his past. "I'm sorry," Emily stammered, her instincts screaming at her to run. The man's expression softened for a moment, as if struggling with a memory. "It wasn't your fault. But happiness, it can be so fragile." Before Emily could respond, another flash of lightning revealed something in the rear-view mirror. A figure standing on the road, watching them. "Go," the man said suddenly, his voice urgent. Emily didn't need to be told twice. She fumbled with the door handle, adrenaline surging through her veins as she tumbled out into the rain. She stumbled out in her car, her mind racing, but the engine still refused to start. Desperation clawed at her as she glanced back at the stranger's car, only to find it empty, the door swinging open in the wind. The figure on the road was gone, leaving nothing but shadows in the storm. And then, as if by some miracle, her car roared to life. She didn't question it. She just drove, speeding away from the haunted highway and the secrets it kept. As she neared the town, the storm began to abate. and the night gave way to the faint glow of dawn. Emily took a deep breath, her heart gradually slowing. Though the encounter would haunt her dreams, she held onto the promise of new life within her, a beacon of hope in the darkness, and somewhere in the distance, the man watched, his purpose fulfilled, as he faded back into the night. In the years that followed, Emily often found herself thinking back to that stormy night. It was a story she never shared, a secret she kept even as her family grew and her life flourished. She would sometimes drive down that same highway where the trees whispered and the shadows stretched long, feeling a sense of gratitude for the mysterious stranger who had, in his own way, saved her. And in those moments, as her children laughed and played, she would remember the man's words and cherish the fragile, precious gift of happiness she had been given. Story number 4. Title: A Love Beyond the Grave. Amelia stood at the gates of the old Elmsworth mansion, gazing up at its grand yet slightly decaying facade. The mansion had been unoccupied for years, casting an eerie shadow over the small town. Despite its haunted reputation, Amelia had been drawn to its Gothic charm and the mysteries it whispered through its cracked walls. An artist at heart, she hoped to find inspiration in the quiet solitude of the mansion. Little did she know that the spirits within were waiting for her, particularly one who had been yearning for a love lost to time. As she explored the dimly lit corridors, she felt a strange yet comforting presence around her, as if someone were watching over her with gentle eyes. A sense of nostalgia washed over her, a feeling that she had been here before, although she knew that was impossible. The mansion's haunting presence belonged to Daniel, a spirit trapped in the liminal space between life and death. In life, Daniel had been a wealthy landowner in the early 1900s, engaged to a woman named Margaret, but his life took a tragic turn when he met an untimely death just weeks before his wedding. Margaret, devastated by his loss, found herself unable to live without him. Consumed by grief, she ended her own life in the very mansion that was meant to be their home. Over the years, as the mansion aged, Daniel's spirit grew restless. It was during this time that Amelia arrived, her presence awakening something within him. She bore an uncanny resemblance to Margaret. Her laughter echoed. Daniel found himself captivated by Amelia. He watched her as she painted, her brush capturing the light and shadow of the mansion's rooms. She was his muse, her spirit radiant with life, and he longed to connect with her. As days turned to weeks, Amelia felt a strange pull toward the mansion. She dreamt of a man she had never met, a man whose presence filled her with warmth and longing. During one of her painting sessions, she found a dusty, ornate mirror in the attic. As she wiped the grime from its surface, she caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure standing behind her. Startled, she turned around, but the room was empty. Yet, in that brief moment, she felt an inexplicable connection, a bond that defied logic and reason. She started to speak to him, the spirit she could feel, but not see, sharing her thoughts and dreams as if he were an old friend. Daniel, unseen but ever present, listened to her every word. He found solace in her voice, the loneliness of his existence easing with each passing day. As Daniel's love for Amelia grew, his memories of Margaret began to fade. Amelia's warmth filled the void within him, her laughter a balm to his tortured soul. He yearned to make himself known to her. In his desperation, Daniel turned to the darker forces that haunted the mansion. He sought a way to become corporeal, to be with Amelia as a living being. One stormy night, driven by his longing, Daniel attempted to reach out to Amelia. The air crackled with energy as he manifested in the mirror, his form hazy and translucent. Amelia gasped, her heart pounding with fear and fascination. Yet, as their eyes met, recognition dawned. She had seen him in her dreams, and in that moment, her fear melted away. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and curiosity. "I am Daniel," he replied, his voice a gentle echo. "I've watched over you, fallen in love with you. I only wish to be with you." Amelia felt a rush of emotions, her heart torn between the impossibility of his existence and the undeniable connection they shared. As the days passed, Amelia found herself drawn deeper into the mansion's mysteries. Daniel's presence was a constant comfort, a love that transcended the boundaries of life and death. She confided in him, sharing her fears and dreams, her heart slowly opening to the love he offered. But as her feelings for Daniel deepened, she was plagued by dark visions, fragments of a past she didn't understand. She saw glimpses of Margaret, felt her despair and heartbreak. The mansion whispered its secrets, urging her to uncover the truth. One evening, as she explored the mansion's library, Amelia discovered a hidden diary. The pages told the tragic story of Daniel and Margaret, their love cut short by fate. Understanding dawned, a chilling realization that Margaret's spirit lingered too, bound by love and jealousy. Margaret's spirit, watching from the shadows, could not bear the sight of Daniel's affection for Amelia. Her sorrow turned to rage, a burning desire to reclaim what she had lost. Driven by her love for Daniel and a growing sense of foreboding, Amelia knew what she had to do. To be with Daniel forever, she would need to make the ultimate sacrifice. On a moonlit night, Amelia made her way to the mansion's rooftop, the wind whispering around her. She felt Daniel's presence, his spirit a comforting warmth. "I understand now," Amelia said, softly gazing up at the stars. "Our love was meant to be, but It can only exist beyond this life. Daniel's spirit appeared before her, his eyes filled with both love and sorrow. Amelia, you don't have to do this. I can't ask you to give up your life for me. But Amelia's mind was made up. She took a deep breath, her heart full of resolve and love. This world holds nothing for me without you. Let us be together beyond the bounds of life and death. With a final, loving glance, Amelia stepped forward, embracing the void as the ground rushed up to meet her. Her spirit rose from her lifeless body, ethereal and radiant. Daniel reached for her, their souls intertwining, finally free from the shackles of their mortal lives. As they embraced, the mansion was filled with a brilliant light, the echoes of their love resonating through the halls. Margaret, witnessing their union, found peace in their happiness and faded into the afterlife. Together, Daniel and Amelia stepped into eternity, their love a beacon that shone through the shadows. The mansion, once a place of sorrow, became a sanctuary of love, a testament. In life, they had been separated by fate, but in death, their souls found the forever they had longed for. Story number 5.
Claire Thompson had always believed in the power of stories to change the world. As she drove into the sleepy town of Oak Ridge, nestled in the shadow of the Appalachian Mountains, she felt a familiar thrill. The town, with its quaint streets and thick surrounding woods, held secrets that Claire was determined to uncover. Recent reports of disappearances had drawn her here. Locals spoke in hushed tones about the vanishings that seemed to defy explanation. Officially, the cases were cold, chalked up to misadventures in the dense forests or people moving away without a word. But Claire knew there was more to it. There were whispers of ghostly figures and strange noises that echoed through the night, drawing the unwary into the woods. Her first stop was the local diner, a classic small-town establishment where the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the aroma of sizzling bacon. Claire hoped to gather local perspectives and perhaps get a lead on the stories she'd heard. At the counter, she struck up a conversation with the waitress, a middle-aged woman named Betty who seemed to know everyone in town. Disappearances, Betty said, pouring Claire a steaming cup of coffee. Yeah, folks around here are pretty shaken up. It's not the first time, you know. Used to happen every few years, always around this time. What do you mean? Claire leaned in, intrigued. It's the mine, Betty whispered, glancing around as if the very walls might overhear her. Old Brackenridge mine, closed down decades ago after the accident. They say it's cursed. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine. She'd read about the Brackenridge mine, a source of local wealth until a cave-in claimed the lives of several miners. Their bodies were never recovered, and the mine had been abandoned ever since. Determined to learn more, Claire visited the town library. Dust motes danced in the slanting rays of sunlight as she pored over old newspapers and town records. The accident at Brackenridge Mine was well documented, a tragedy that had cast a long shadow over the community. But as she delved deeper, Claire found something curious accounts of strange phenomena around the mine site dated back to before the accident. Old journals spoke of miners hearing voices and seeing shadows in the tunnels. Some had even quit, claiming the mine was haunted. One entry, in particular, caught her attention. It was a journal from a miner named Thomas Grady, who wrote about a presence in the mine. He described an encounter with a figure that seemed to emerge from the rock itself, whispering in a language he couldn't understand. Claire's skin prickled with unease. Could this presence be linked to the recent disappearances? Claire decided to investigate the mine firsthand. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, she set out toward the wooded hills. The path was overgrown, the forest thick and silent, except for the rustling of leaves in the breeze. As she approached the mine, an inexplicable sense of dread settled over her. The entrance yawned like a dark mouth, and Claire hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But curiosity and determination propelled her forward. Inside, the air was cool and damp. A flashlight beam danced over the walls, revealing rusted tracks and rotting timber supports. Every step echoed ominously, the sound swallowed by the darkness. Claire paused, straining to hear. For a moment there was nothing. Then, faintly, a whisper. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was pleading, as if calling for help. She followed the sound deeper into the mine, heart pounding. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, interspersed with sobs that made her chest tighten with sympathy and fear. Suddenly the whispers stopped. Claire found herself in a large chamber, the remnants of mining equipment scattered about. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling slightly. Silence answered. But Claire felt a pressure, an awareness of being watched. She turned slowly, her flashlight revealing nothing but rock and shadows. Just as she was about to dismiss it as nerves, she saw it, a figure at the edge of the light, barely more than a silhouette. It flickered like a candle flame before vanishing. Claire stumbled back, her breath coming in quick gasps. The air was thick with a sense of despair, of lives cut short and stories left untold. Back at her motel, Claire sifted through her notes, trying to make sense of what she'd experienced. The whispers, the figure, were they remnants of the miners or something more sinister? Determined to find answers, she sought out the town's historian, an elderly man named Harold Miller. His home was a treasure trove of artifacts and documents, a testament to the town's rich history. Harold listened patiently as Claire recounted her experiences, nodding thoughtfully. "The mine has always been peculiar," he said, "but there's something you should know. The company that owned the mine was involved in some questionable activities." He handed her a faded ledger. Inside were records of shipments labeled special material. According to Harold, rumors had circulated about experiments conducted deep within the mine, possibly involving rituals meant to summon supernatural forces. The company wanted power, control over the resources, but they awakened something they couldn't contain, Harold explained. When the accident happened, it was more than just a cave-in. It was the spirits claiming their due. With this new information, Claire knew she had to confront whatever lingered in the mine. She returned, this time armed with a plan. If she could disrupt the connection between the spirit and the mine, perhaps she could free the trapped souls. In the heart of the mine, she set up cameras and voice recorders, hoping to capture evidence. As she worked, the oppressive atmosphere closed in, shadows shifting at the edge of her vision. Then the whispers began anew, rising to a cacophony of despair. The figure appeared again, more distinct this time, its features twisted in anguish. Claire spoke aloud, addressing the spirit directly. "I know what happened here. You were wronged, and it's time for justice." The spirit paused, as if listening. Claire continued, reciting the names of the lost miners, acknowledging their pain and promising to tell their story. The air shimmered, the figure flickering uncertainly. Claire felt a surge of hope, channeling all her empathy and determination into her words. The spirit let out a mournful wail, the sound echoing through the mine like a final, keening cry. Then silence fell, heavy and complete. Claire's equipment recorded it all, the whispers, the spectral figure, the moment of release. The evidence was irrefutable. a testament to the mine's haunted legacy. Back in town, she shared her findings with the community. The truth about the mine and the miners' plight became national news, leading to an official investigation into the mining company's practices. The townspeople at last found peace, the curse lifted. Claire's article brought her the recognition she'd sought, but more importantly, it brought closure to the families of the lost miners.
Story number 6. Title: The Haunting of Elif. The halls of Greenwood High School were alive with the usual buzz of teenage chatter and shuffling feet as students hurried to their next classes. Among them was Elif, a bright and cheerful senior, known for her kindness and infectious smile. She excelled in academics and athletics, and her positive attitude had made her one of the most popular students in her grade. But one student's jealousy quickly turned into an obsession. Elif's life took a darker turn when she caught the attention of a fellow student named Alex. Alex was quiet and withdrawn, keeping to himself and often spending his time in the school's library, buried in books that reigned despite his isolation. He was infatuated with Elif, captivated by her warmth and beauty. He began to linger near her locker, hoping for any interaction, however brief. His infatuation grew into an obsession. Alex believed that they were meant to be together, despite attempts she tried to gently explain that she was not interested. But Alex only saw this as a challenge to overcome. His infatuation was evident to those around him. Fellow students noticed the way Alex's eyes followed Elif wherever she went, how his demeanor shifted from calm to agitated whenever she spoke to another guy, but no one realized the depth of his obsession until it was too late. One chilly autumn evening, after a long day of classes and track practice, Elif decided to take a shortcut through the nearby woods on her way home. The path was secluded, but she had walked it many times before. The trees whispered in the gentle breeze, and fallen leaves crunched underfoot as the setting sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink. As she walked, Elif sensed she wasn't alone. She glanced over her shoulder, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. She quickened her pace, clutching her backpack tightly. Her heart raced with a feeling of unease she couldn't shake. Then she heard a twig snap behind her. "Elif," he said softly, taking a step forward. "What do you want, Alex?" Elif asked, her voice steady despite her unease. "I just want to talk," he replied, his tone pleading. "I know you don't see it now, but we belong together. I can make you happy." Elif shook her head, taking a step back. "I'm sorry, Alex, but I don't feel that way. Please, just let me go home." His face twisted with frustration and desperation. "No, you're wrong. You're just confused. I love you, Elif. Why can't you see that? The tension in the air was palpable as Alex's demeanor shifted from pleading to anger. He lunged at her, his eyes wild with determination. In the struggle that ensued, Alex's obsession overcame his reason, and in a fit of rage, he pushed Elif to the ground. Her head hit a rock, the impact sudden and final. Panic seized Alex as he realized what he'd done. He fled the scene, leaving Elif alone in the forest as the last light of day faded to darkness. Days turned into weeks, and the search for Elif consumed the small town. Her disappearance left a void in the school, with friends and teachers struggling to understand how someone so full of life could vanish without a trace. Alex, haunted by his actions, withdrew further into himself. He was plagued by nightmares and visions of Elif, her eyes wide with fear and betrayal. Her absence weighed heavily on him, but Elif's story didn't end with her death. Her spirit lingered, restless and seeking justice. She couldn't move on, her soul tethered to the earthly realm by the violent end she had met. Strange occurrences began to unfold at Greenwood High School. Students reported hearing soft footsteps echoing through the hallways long after classes had ended. Locker doors would slam shut on their own, and cold drafts swept through classrooms despite the mild weather outside. Elif's closest friends, grief-stricken and desperate for answers, started to sense her presence. They would catch glimpses of her in mirrors and reflections, her figure ghostly and translucent. One by one, those who had witnessed Alex's obsession began to experience terrifying visions. They saw Elif in their dreams, reaching out to them, her face a mask of anguish and pleading for help. As the hauntings grew more frequent and intense, Alex found himself drawn to the spot in the woods where Elif had died. Guilt gnawed at him, leaving him hollow and haunted. He knew he couldn't escape what he had done. One night, driven by a compulsion he couldn't ignore, Alex returned to the woods. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the trees. As he approached the clearing, a chill settled over him, and he saw her. Elif stood before him, her spirit shimmering in the moonlight. Her eyes were filled with sadness, but there was a strength in her presence that made Alex tremble. "Why?" Elif's voice was a soft echo, carried on the wind. Tears streamed down Alex's face as he fell to his knees. The air around them crackled with energy, the boundary between worlds thin and fragile. Elif stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "Your actions took my life, Alex," she said, her voice steady and calm. "But you can't run from the truth forever. You need to confess to make things right." Alex nodded, his heart heavy with remorse. He knew what he had to do. With Elif's spirit watching over him, he returned to town and went straight to the police, confessing everything. With Alex's confession, Elif's body was finally found and she was laid to rest. The truth brought closure to her family and friends, allowing them to grieve and remember the joy she had brought into their lives. As for Elif, her spirit found peace. She visited her friends one last time, her presence a comforting warmth that filled them with a sense of calm and closure. Alex was sentenced to prison, his actions weighed down by the consequences of his obsession. He carried the burden of what he had done, knowing he had to live with the guilt for the rest of his life. But Elif's legacy endured, a reminder of the light she had brought to the world. Her story became a cautionary tale at Greenwood High, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked obsession and the importance of cherishing life's fleeting moments. And in the quiet corners of the school, some say you can still feel her presence, a whisper of warmth and kindness watching over those she had loved in life, ensuring they remain safe and cherished in her memory. Thank you for watching our video. For more creepy stories, stay tuned to our channel. Like, subscribe and share. See you next time. Till then, take care.